Institute, then about the series, and then introduce our speakers today. Or I should not just say speakers, because that's the very point here, that they'll not just be speaking, but taking you on a real experiential journey. And that is actually already something that's very much at the heart of the Global Humanities Initiative. So the Comparative Global Humanities Initiative, or in short, Global Humanities Initiative, was actually founded in 2021. I had just joined MIT actually for that purpose. And it started with a very simple question, namely, why do we live in times that, on the one hand, are so enlightened, more enlightened than ever, but also so dark? And things haven't been getting better since, no, lately. And why do we produce so many unwanted futures, no? If you think from micro to macro, we start with our own bodily health, with our mental well-being, with, our families, our society, states, the planet. On every level, we seem to be failing in some systematic way and not getting things completely right. That's why we are in this state right now, no? So in that case, we really took kind of a very MIT-like approach, saying, what is the root cause diagnostics here? No, why is this, and how can we bring tools to bear on that to understand why this is and actually take ourselves into a better future? No, and I just want to show everybody who's not in MIT here, the MIT motto used to be just mens et manus, so hand and mind, very engineering-like. Lately, they've also been adding core, the heart, which is, of course, so important. And in many ways, the initiative kind of stands for this. And we also worried a lot, because it started with humanists, about the what is called the crisis of the humanities, but we can call it the transformation of the humanities, and wondered, might the humanities be a key, no, to actually these questions of why are we living in these dark times? How can we actually stop producing so many unwanted futures? And so we actually developed then a whole beautiful, you see this here, mandala of projects, and we call these different projects here, or these broader areas, pillars. These are kind of signposts of big questions, big areas where transformation is happening now, either really broadly societal, that we want to make happen, or also more specifically for certain humanities areas or disciplines where we want this change to happen. And on top here is, of course, very Aristotelian, although we are very global, the question of the good life, no? Religion, philosophy, sciences. Then we have our second pillar here, that's today's forum, cognition, learning, and human flourishing, bringing together neuroscientists and also actually, people interested in contemplative practices in world history, and people actually really taking forward systems change and education. I'll say more about our speakers in a moment. Medicine and the healing arts, no, absolutely crucial. Good governance, chronic diseases, no, areas where we fail a lot and things really need to change. Then very topical, good governance in bad times, no? That will be actually our next forum event. And I want to point out here already that one of the key differentiators of our think, feel, do tank, as we call it now, according to mind, heart, hand, and heart, is that we really go from creating new comparative knowledge to area specialists who have worked across the world history of human experiences in many different cultures and have the philological and other types of tools to open that archive of human experience to us, for millennia, to use that and then bring that to bear on our current moment, saying, like, what are those legacies that could actually help us really create better wanted futures? And we bring in a lot of practitioners, and in that sense, also really people who can make that change happen more broadly in our societies, in our states, and countries, and in the world. And for that pillar, for example, we will be bringing in probably the Consul General in Boston here of South Korea. South Korea is top in terms of cultural diplomacy, an area of kind of soft power diplomacy, that is crucial to really increase in a world that's so polarized and so much at odds, where states and people are so much at odds. Environment, music, humans and their literatures, heritage identity, and then public literacy, civic systems, media and emotional intelligence. Very crucial. That will be our third event, actually, forum event here. And I only want to point out here again, the practitioner perspective here. We have a project on AI tools for democracy and self-awareness that's currently being tested in the German elections, which, as you probably know, are a big challenge. So we are there on the ground already. So the pillars are more kind of big stakes in the ground. Here are the construction zones. Here are the areas where we want to make an impact. Go to our website, which Johan can actually put into the chat, now the website, and go to the website and you can read up on all these pillars. And under these pillars, you have these concrete projects now with project leaders and so on. And you can look more into that. A few explanation also about the forum series. So throughout this year, we will be going through these 9 pillars, starting with pillar number 2, then going to number 3, and then jumping actually to number 9. But each of these pillars will actually have a forum event. And the goal of this forum event, forum, as you know, the Latin meaning of it is really to bring people together publicly, no? To speak, to talk, to live, to eat. In that sense, we want to be this kind of digital forum where whoever is interested in these big signpost topics and construction zones, where we want to, move the needle, should come, where you'll get a little bit of experiential kind of taste also of the topic. We'll try to bring in practitioners, and the wonderful thing is that Jonas and Justus are practitioners in some ways. In that sense, they really embody the best of what we are trying to do at GHI. So sign up for our mail letter and mailing list so that you get actually notification about the other forums. And again, we'll be going through the entire circle, and by the end of the year in December, we will have finished the forum series, and we really want to bring many of you in. If you're interested in this topic, reach out to the project leaders, reach out to the team at GHI. We are looking for more people who would like to join our initiative and our movement, you could almost say. Without further ado now, I would like to introduce the speakers here and the presenters. So there's Jonas Mago on top of my screen. I don't know where he is. Yes, he's saying hi there. He's a cognitive neuroscientist who is specializing in the study of contemplative practices. And that's, of course, also where kind of the area knowledge of GHI comes in big. Currently, he focuses on jhana meditation, on collective charismatic Christian prayer, and also on psychedelic experiences. No? So he really brings into this project the state-of-the-art neuroimaging. He'll be saying more about that. And then combining that with theoretical and computational modeling approaches. No? He is, again, an embodiment really of the best here at GHI, a certified unified mindfulness a meditation coach. And so he really brings so many different aspects of how we want to build our toolboxes, how you want to change our awareness now of the problems in the world to the table that I ask Jonas and Justus really to open our series, because he really embodies that in his humanities background, being a neuroscientist, being a practitioner, and he has a perfect partner in crime here, or you are partners in crime to each other, Justus Wachs. Justus is a participatory action researcher and organizational developer. And actually, both Jonas and Justus are at the moment finishing up their PhDs at McGill, I should say that. And Justus's research focuses on integrating contemplative and embodied methods, no? Such as mindfulness, storytelling, and system sensing to foster transformative learning and system change within sustainability-focused organizations. One of his wonderful articles, actually, he starts the article by saying something like, the climate crisis we are currently experiencing is in part a narrative crisis, no? and it's very moving. So storytelling also as an important part here. Uh, so without further ado now, unless there are any questions directly on GHI or on anything I've said, I would actually give over the baton to Jonas and Justus, and you can switch your brains now from, okay, here's a forum series, an academic is speaking, to really saying like, wow, we want to be taking on this experiential journey here in the next 1.5 hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wiebke, and so great to see everyone today. And yeah, like Wiebke said, very much in the spirit of the series, we'll have a little presentation for you with some of the core ideas of a pillar. But before we dive into that, we thought we'll just do a grounding moment to kind of situate ourselves in this experiential mode of working. And then after our presentation as well, we'll kind of reflect on and sit with these practices and discuss them, so that we're not just talking away, but really reflecting individually and discussing in this room as well. But for this little opening moment, just for 2, 3 minutes, I invite you to just maybe sit up straight for a little moment of grounding. You're welcome to close your eyes if you choose, or keep them open. Just gazing, perhaps just a little bit in front of you. You can even turn away from your screen or turn your camera off if that helps you arrive. And just giving your whole system a moment to land here, to land in this present moment, in the space that you're in this body. And just see if there are any sounds or sights in your space that you can become conscious of. Is there anything you hear, some noises, near or far? Or if you've got your eyes open, what's alive in the periphery of your vision? And I invite you to also include in this field of your awareness the feeling of your body right now. How is your body feeling? Is there perhaps any tension, any tickling, maybe a warm feeling in your gut or around your heart? And whatever you're feeling right now, just bringing a sense of welcome, of spaciousness, of appreciation, maybe even, to the sights, sounds, and sensations on your body. And just inviting all of these experiences to draw you into this present moment, into right here. And I invite you to also add to the sights, sounds, and sensations on your body an awareness of the breath as it passes into your body and out again. Perhaps you can locate it with the gentle rising and falling of your belly, or as a soft passing of air at your nose. And using the sights, sounds, sensations, and breath to arrive in this moment gently. And then I want to bring awareness to the fact that we're calling in from Chichage, also known as Montreal, which is traditional land of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. And I invite you to consider what land you are calling in from. What does this land mean to you? Zoom out your awareness. Where are you located? And how did you arrive there? I invite you to consider bringing into mind all the other lands you've traversed in your own history, in the history of your family. What lands have your ancestors walked on? And how does that shape you today? And then I invite you to zoom even further out. Can you feel the earth, the landmass that we're all walking on? I invite you to see if you can breathe in and breathe out with a sense of this earth that you walk on. And then I invite you to come back to this moment, to right here. Again, take another second before we enter the call again, to just check in with your body, with your breath, everything you can hear and feel right now. Perhaps giving a little note of gratitude to whatever is alive now. And then finally, before you open your eyes or turn to the call again, just feel into this community, this meeting and exchange point right now in this call, this virtual space. Feel into it with your heart. And then from this place, I invite you to open your eyes again. Turn on your videos again if you choose. And join us again with your full attention. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining me on that and joining us on that. Jonas, I wonder whether you want to say anything before we start?
Get away, Justus.
Great. Could you start the slides? Wonderful. Okay, everyone, welcome to this pillar presentation on our pillar Cognition, Learning, and Human Flourishing, a journey into presence, practice, and complexity, as we've titled it here. I think we'll skip the sharing in the chat now, since I think we are all properly arrived. But like we said, just something we want to do for today, a little structure, and we'll see how we flow with that. We'll kind of roll with the punches. We'll just introduce ourselves. Perhaps we'll skip it as well, since Wiebke has done such a great job. And then we'll speak a little bit about some core inspirations and concepts that have led to the formation in this pillar. And then we'll, instead of discussing them right away, we'll kind of go into some guided practice and reflection around these concepts. And then finally, we called it their collaborative sense making. So some way of kind of discussing them in the group and seeing what's alive for people, what comes up as we're discussing them. Yeah, I think we'll skip over the intros. Yeah, exactly. So for some core inspirations that inspired this pillar, some fundamental questions that we're really asking ourselves as we're putting our minds together to come, and our hearts and hands to come up with this pillar, is these questions of how do humans learn to navigate a complex world, and what enables individuals and societies to flourish and make meaning amid uncertainty, crisis, and transformation. So very much like Wiebke led us into. And some core concepts that are for us in these questions that I'll just briefly define our understanding, and then we'll go into each one of them with a bit more detail, is first of all complexity. So what we're thinking of when we're talking about complexity is that we're thinking about complex systems that are made up of many parts that interact in quite unpredictable, nonlinear ways without a single person or entity in charge. They are unpredictable, they're nonlinear, they exhibit collective behavior, and they also adapt via learning or evolution. So complexity is our first central one, and then the second one is wicked problems, which are many of the crises we face today, like Wiebke already hinted at, issues that are hard to define. There's often no clear solution, not even clear definition of the problem. They're deeply connected to each other, and they even change as people try to solve them. And solving them often requires collaboration, creativity, and flexible thinking, often modes of thinking that we perhaps don't quite know yet. And then finally, a final concept is meaning-making practices. So these are techniques, processes, or ways of thinking through which individuals, collectives, and societies make sense of our experience and the world around them. And these can be cognitive, embodied, affective, relational, cultural. So loads of ways in which we can make meaning. And yeah, like I say, we'll go through each one of these in turn. And starting with complexity. Take it away, Jonas.
Yeah, as Justus has introduced complexity, we can think about complexity as, oh, I just need to make this a tad smaller. There we go. One thing we would like to postulate here is that nonlinearity and emergence are fundamental characteristics of the irreducible mystery of existence. For example, complexity is a more and more dominant way of analyzing physical processes, but also societal processes, and also neuronal and physiological processes within the human brain and mind. So what we'd like to propose here is that complexity always has been a dominant factor and is currently skyrocketing in the late stage capitalist globalized world, where we're just facing more and more complex problems to solve as a collective. And with that, one way to visualize this in a more graphical way is to make the proposal that complexity might be not that different from how we think about reality, and that reality and complexity are somehow irreducibly tied together in some intricate way. And the big part of this pillar is to understand what is the way that these two concepts are linked and very irreducible to one another.
Great. And then to move on from complexity, the second big interest area is what we're calling here wicked problems. So wicked problems, what we're thinking here is these multiple overlapping global crises that we're facing. Some also call it the polycrisis. So this is crises like climate change, COVID-19, biodiversity loss, systemic racism, polarization, following an intuition that these crises are actually overlapping and interdependent in complex ways. And they are also hard to clearly define, interdependent and multi-causal, often unstable. We see that solutions, there might either not be very clear solutions, or the solutions create unforeseen consequences that create other crises down the line. They can be socially complex, also multi-scalar and translocal, so they're both global and local at the same time. And solving them, we know, requires sustained changes in practice that we sometimes can't even imagine yet. Next slide here, Jonas. And another thing we want to postulate is that these overlapping crises are both external and internal, both in their consequences and in their root causes. So starting to think about the consequences here, we've put two statistics on the slide, but there are so many different ones that we could choose, unfortunately. If you think about external consequences there on the left, the World Bank estimates that climate change, as an example, could push 132 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. And then internal consequences, the statistic there on the right. A recent global survey revealed that 60% of individuals aged 16 to 25 are very worried about climate change. And many of them report that these anxieties actually affect their daily functioning, already pointing at the interwovenness of the internal state and the external functioning. So that for consequences, but then thinking about root causes, where we're also wanting to trace this dynamic between external and internal. One thinker whose work we draw on and find helpful in conceptualizing how root causes and leverage points to tackle these crises is the systems thinker Donella Meadows. She came up with this leverage points model for conceptualizing how to change and intervene and find root causes in a system, which is displayed here on the slide, and I'll talk you through a little bit. So on the left there, you see the system and then what Meadows calls shallow leverage points. So these are leverage points that are fairly easy to design, yet don't have a very strong transformative effect. And she calls this here constants, parameters and numbers, or material stocks and flows. So thinking about climate change, one thing we could think there is recycling behaviors, for example, or increased recycling. Might seem like a big challenge, but also one that can be achieved and done. Yet at the same time, so Meadows argues, and I would go with this, doesn't have a very strong transformative force. It's not useful, but we need more than that to really tackle these crises. And then on the right is what Meadows calls deeper leverage points. And these are harder to design for, but have a higher transformative impact. And what she goes into here, as you can see there towards the end of the line on the right, are goals of the system, mindsets and paradigms of the system. And now if we think about mindsets and paradigms that are at the root of these crises that we're facing today, and these are debatable, but I would say something like human nature separation or even growth, you could see that these are both societally sanctioned and reproduced, but also individually reproduced, and that they also affect the kind of ways through which we frame our actions and how we live our life. So again, they exist in this internal and external interwovenness. And then one slide, Jonas. And with a very central idea here that existing societal narratives are insufficient to navigate these wicked problems. And instead, a search that motivates us here on the next slide is that these wicked problems require a mental adaptiveness, a kind of fluid and multi-perspectival and dialectic modes of thinking to spur individual and societal flourishing.
And that's where both Justus and I started to think about what this pillar in our project could be in engaging with the relationship of these wicked problems and practices by which individuals have been able to make meaning, and think about practices that have been used in the past and that are used today through different cultures to engage with complexity. And the idea here is that ancient and modern meaning-making practices can help to navigate this complexity. And these are contemplative practices, therapeutic approaches, and rituals. And to visualize this again, there is a certain overlap where the complexity of the world and some sense of meaning and understanding can overlap. So the idea is that meaning is not a reduction or simplification of the world and hiding away from the complexity, but finding the space where we can find meaning and patterns in the complex nonlinearity of some underlying processes of the world. And there's many practices that could be considered as allowing such overlap. And these are Christianity, Buddhist meditation, possibly psychedelics and the culture around those, rituals, mythic traditions, psychoanalysis, dream work, active imagination, and we could have put many, many more here. And the really beautiful thing is, and out from our perspective, exciting view is that meaning making is currently a very central topic in what happens in the cognitive and neurosciences. Where for a long, long time, when we think about how we make meaning, and meaning making is a way of how we perceive the world. For a long time, perception was understood as this idea of there's something out in the world, like a flower on the slide or here a cup. And some information from that cup is coming to our sensory gates, may it be eyes, ears, may it be touch. And then we build up meaning of what we perceive there in the world. And that was one of the dominant ways of how we thought of perception in the neurosciences. But more recently, there has been the proposal and lots of evidence for it that this process might be reversed. So that we as agents and cognitive beings, as individuals and humans, we spend a lot more energy and time by anticipating what we see. There's way too much information in the world to kind of make meaning out of all of it. So we approach the world with certain expectations and assumptions of what we expect to see. So in many ways, we can say that what we perceive in the world is to a large extent what we already expect to see, like a certain confirmation bias. And only a small portion of that is actually the world giving meaning to us. So sense making is not being exposed to more infos, but engaging with the world and infos with a kind of more patterned way, with a more skilled way. And one example is, look at this image of black and white dots, and take a few seconds to look at it and just see if there is certain meaning arising for you when you look at these shapes. And just for yourself, maybe give it a name, maybe think about what it is. Now let's look at this image just for a little bit and go back here. Again, just look at this for a second and go back here. And now look again. Is there any certain meaning or patterns that you see rise out of these dots? And maybe has it changed? And if it has changed, then the only reason, the only difference here is that you come with a different attitude, with a different way of anticipation. And we want to think about practices of being different, such anticipations for when we engage with the world.
Right, so there's then one first thing we're seeing following some of the work of Varela and more, that cognition enables sense-making, adaptation, and meaning-making in these complex and dynamic systems. But building on that, we're also interested in how this meaning-making informs and supports collective and societal transformation, and in turn, how these collective processes inform and shape individual meaning-making. So it's really at this intersection, at the tension field between internal, collective, and societal adaptations that we're situating our interest here. And then returning to our fundamental questions that we postulated there at the beginning, thinking about at this intersection, how do humans learn to navigate a complex, uncertain world? And what enables individuals and societies to flourish amid uncertainty, crisis, and transformation? And what we want to do in this pillar is use theories of cognition and learning to explore how meaning-making modalities and practices shape human capacities to make sense of the world, create meaning, and spur transformation. That's the overall approach. And our first project is called Contemplative Practices for Mental Adaptiveness, which in which we're thinking to design and facilitate a recurring 8-week course that teaches attention and awareness training and also allows participants to integrate their own contemplative traditions. With that, we want to build an ongoing forum to foster exchange across contemplative traditions and in the long run investigate neurophysiological mechanisms and learning effects of these practices. So this is the first project that we've devised there. And this brings us a little bit to the end of the kind of academic segment of our talk. Just a little teaser and some food for thought. And instead of discussing this and opening this up straight away, in the spirit of just working a bit more experientially and reflectively here, we want to actually run everyone through a bit of a guided reflection and practice before we discuss this a bit more. So to start, like we've talked about, we've kind of situated this interest at this intersection of complexity and meaning, right? And we would love to invite you to use a practice that I love a lot for my own meaning making and sense making, which is stream of consciousness writing. So in a minute, I'll just explain the idea first, but then the idea is to pick up a pen and paper. I would very much recommend to go analog with this, but if that's not available to you today, then also just a notepad or the Notes app on your device might work. And in stream of consciousness writing, it's really a beautiful contemplative practice by itself, because much like many meditation techniques, the idea is that you kind of bypass your cognitive critical mind a little bit through writing continuously without pausing or self-editing. So in a minute, we'll give you a prompt, and if the prompt just leads you to write, continue to write a certain word, if you get to this break, like burger, 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 then the invitation there is to just continue writing that until something new emerges. And a big kind of invitation, another one, is to really pause and give loving attention, but also a pausing moment to your kind of critical, self-censoring, self-editing mind that can be very well cultivated in academic spaces. So to repeat, there will be a prompt, which we'll tell you in a second, or even two actually. And then the invitation is to just launch into the unknown. Just start writing without self-correcting or self-censoring. It can be anything. This is like an exploration into the unknown of your own mind, heart, body, hand space. Are there any questions about the practice itself before we look at the prompts? And of course, if you just want to normally jot down your thoughts, that is also very welcome. This is just a little invitation to share a practice that I really, really love. Great. It seems like there are no concrete questions. So we have two prompts for you, and I invite you to take 4 minutes for each prompt. Yeah, that's a good time. And I will tell you when the 4 minutes are over and it's time to transition to the next one. And I will just tell you the prompts here. The first one is, how do I navigate uncertainty and complexity in my own life and work? So very much about you. And the second one zooms out a bit more, asking how could meaning-making practices, meditation, therapy, ritual, myth, help tackle these overlapping crises that we've spoke about. I'll also post these in the chat, and I'll just give you another minute or so to get ready. If you still need to get your journal and your pen and paper, then do that. Set yourself up, maybe take a few deep breaths to prepare this practice. And then again, we'll start with the first prompt. I give you 4 minutes. Then I'll say 4 minutes are over. The invitation is to transition to the second prompt. Let me get my journal myself. Okay. So, first prompt, how do I navigate uncertainty and complexity in my own life and work? And the timer starts now. Take another 10-15 seconds to wrap up any final thoughts, any final words that want to come on the page. Then I invite you to take a deep breath, shake a bit, and then the invitation is to move on to the second prompt. How could meaning-making practices help tackle overlapping crises? And again, take 4 minutes to journal stream of consciousness on this prompt. Wonderful. And again, taking another 10-15 seconds to finish up any final thoughts on this prompt. I know it's quite a short time, probably quite an intense burst of writing, but sometimes constriction is the parent of creativity. And then if you're done, feel free to stretch a little bit. If you're in space, you can get up, just move your body a bit, shake, give your body anything that it needs, any kind of shoulder stretches. Yes, wonderful. I see people giving their bodies what they want. That's beautiful. And before we go back to these writings, which is often good to do with stream of consciousness writing, we'll just embark on a different little practice. So find yourself again, and I give it over to you, Jonas.
Okay. After engaging with pen and paper, I would now like to take you on a little guided exploration. And I want to introduce 2 or 3 concepts before we go on this journey, because this journey shall be a little bit of a experiment. And there's this little graph that I've prepared for you. And on the horizontal axis, you see a dimension from effort to relaxation. And then on the vertical axis, you see the concepts going from attention to awareness. Very simple. What they mean is effort is like a kind of using energy to get something done. Relaxation is kind of releasing that energy and effort. I think they might be easy to understand. And then attention we often understand as focusing our perception on like a very small area. And awareness we could understand as perceiving a bigger, a less constrained space of information. And what I would like to do in these next few minutes is to play with these ideas a little bit and get to know what they mean, and then see how we can use them in relating to perception, to our own body, and ultimately to complexity. And before we settle in, just keep your eyes open and just look at my hand and join me in this little exercise. It's one that my teacher has taught, and yesterday a dear friend has reminded me of this, and I think it fits beautifully. And just clench your fist as hard as you can, like so that it almost hurts. And then a bit more. And now don't do anything, but just let go, release. And just check in. What was it like? There's nothing you needed to do. There was not an intentional opening. There was not an intentional, like, the relaxing part wasn't effort. The effort was the clenching of the fist. And what we're trying to do, let's do this one more time. Use effort to clench the fist. And now just release. Great. And with this, you can settle in into a posture, and if you like, you can close your eyes so you can leave them open. And I will start taking a little journey to explore this very thing, not with your hand, but in your own experience. And to start off, just settle in for a moment, check in how your body is feeling at the moment. Maybe check in what space you're in. Can you sense the space around you? Maybe it feels large, maybe it feels small. Okay. Now, as our first little experiment, I want you to focus as much attention as you can at your nose and the sensation of breathing at the nose. If you've meditated before, maybe let go what you've done before and just over effort. Take 100% of your effort. For the next 10 seconds, you're not allowed to feel anything else but the very sensation of breath at your nose. Like it should be a sense of like slightly over efforting, it should be slightly intense. And now, just like with your hand, totally release that. It doesn't matter where your mind goes. Just totally let go of any effort you just used. And notice that it might feel a bit more relaxing, or maybe even joyful to let go. Okay, let's try this one more time. Focus all of your attention at the nose, more than you would usually do. The next few seconds, do not feel anything else but your nose. Maybe try a bit harder. And let go. Allow your mind to wander wherever it likes to wander. Let go of all the effort. And let go a little bit more. You're totally allowed to just relax as much as you like here for a second. Okay. And deepening this relaxation, I invite you to actually widen the focus and become aware of your entire body. And even the space just outside your body. Now become aware of the entire room that you're sitting in. You're able to feel the space meter away from you. Any sense of the space around you. And you can play with this a little bit and see how far you can open up, expand the area that you can be aware of. Maybe you can even feel the space outside your room. And just let this spaciousness grow. So gentle, so gentle. Okay. Next, this is super gentle as well. Stay in touch with this spaciousness and ever so slightly, make the nose, the sensation of the nose, a tiny bit more salient. Notice the sensation at the nose a bit more clearly. This is a little balancing act. If you can't notice the nose, use a bit more effort. If you lose touch with the sense of your body or the space around you, relax a little bit more and get in touch with that sense of space again. The mind wanders, play around a little bit. Does it help you more to relax a little bit more? Or does it help you to focus a bit more strongly on your nose? There is no right or wrong here. This is your own exploration and getting to know what your mind is needing in this very moment. Checking in again how tense your body and mind is. Maybe taking a moment to relax a tiny bit more. Okay, next, I want you to let go even of that trying. I want you to do nothing. Nothing does not mean to very intentionally do nothing, because then you're doing something. The next 2 minutes, allow your mind to do whatever it wants and don't interfere with it. If it is still, let it be still. If it wants to think about whatever, allow it to do that thinking. thing you're doing right now, stop doing that as well. Okay, and finally, imagine a very, very gentle smile on your face. And to yourself, say a little thank you. Thank you that you're taking these minutes to be with myself. And there's no rush here. You can take a minute for this, but in your own time, gently find a way to close this practice. Gently open your eyes, coming back to the group, maybe carrying a little moment of joy that knowing that there have been so many other people here that have been on their own little journey here. Thank you. Thank you for that little journey.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Oh, and again, there's an invitation to take a little second to just give your body what it needs. Any little stretches. Oh, great. And I think we can stop sharing the slides as well at this point, Jonas. And I invite you to just take another minute to just go over what you were writing in the stream of consciousness, now informed by this exploration of space and concentration, awareness and relaxation, and even gratitude and joy. And just you're welcome to underline anything that jumps out at you from what you were writing, just to go back to your explorations there. And then I think something that we'll try, it's a little bit in the realm of the experimental, but I think it could be nice to try. If it doesn't work, then just breathe and spend some time with yourself. I think we'll try to go into breakout rooms of pairs so that everybody can just have a little moment to brainstorm some of the things, share. This is very open. You can share some impressions of some of the concepts or what came out of your reflection, and we'll just have 5 minutes for it, maybe even 4. Wiebke, do you want to say something? Are you wanting to come in?
I'm sure that there'll also be there are going to be a lot of questions from the audience, possibly, but
Sure.
I'm sure you have also planned for that, no?
Yeah, I think if we go into 4-minute breakouts and then have another sort of 10 minutes or so to wrap up at the end with questions and with your closing, do you think that works? Or
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll put you all into pairs. If somebody just happens to be there with their camera off, then just chill a little bit. And we'll just have 4 minutes. Introduce yourself, brainstorm some ideas, and we'll go from there. Great. 1 second here. Okay. Wonderful smiles. I know that was a very short time to just start the exchange. I hope it was still nourishing. Great. I think that's so as far as we have planned, and now there's just some space for questions or comments or feedback. If anybody wants to just chime in with what they shared or what came up in the meditation or through the concepts, the floor is now yours.
One, just that all of the guided elements were so expansive and profound. So I wanted to give thanks for that to the both of you. A question that came to me earlier is about how the directionality of complexity and meaning, because there's this talking about them being interwoven, but also how they directly modulate each other is something that I'm curious about, rather than just being interwoven spheres, how complexity comes from meaning and how meaning comes from complexity. I'm just curious about in your developing of this of this discourse between these two, how people think about this kind of modular organismic quality of the two.
Jonas, do you want to say something on that?
Feel free to also take it. I'm happy either way.
Sure, yeah, I can. Yeah, I absolutely love that that provocation. Thank you so much. And we're very much at the beginning of thinking about this and exploring it. We had one graph that we've taken out, kind of something that's often helped us in our brainstorming is to just put the ideas into graphs so we can kind of have something tangible to discuss and work with something kind of material. And the graph was just an X-Y axis, and then kind of complexity was going up and meaning making faculties were going down. And while something in it rang true, we also like, this is probably too simple to put in our presentation. But they might make each other, and equally it might be, I think one of the core intuitions that we're following here might be that the more complex the world is, in the sense of the more technology, the more information, the more noise, the more emotional processing that we have to face in our lives, the harder it is to make meaning in it. This could be some relationship that we observe, or indeed the inverse. Like the more kind of challenge we have for our contemplative and meaning-making practices, the stronger our sense of direction might become. I think there's no hard rule there. It's certainly both can be feasible. So I think we're very much following an exploration there of how this unprecedented rise in complexity affects our meaning-making abilities. Anything to add there, Jonas?
Yeah, I think what you say speaks to it. Maybe that's at the very core of the question of how these two relate. And for me, like when I sit with these questions, what comes up is when we have meaning, when we have purpose, when we are able to have some practice that helps us to feel a sense of clarity. Is that a clarity in the complexity? Is that a clarity by moving away from it? What's the subtle difference between kind of differentiating and moving away from the complexity and embracing it? And for me, that's, I think, very interesting and think about how are different practices and traditions engaging with that spectrum.
Yeah, more to say there, but I do want to give other people the chance to ask something if they want. Or indeed to come in on this line of thinking. Devlin, if you would like, or anyone else to jump on this train of thought.
Unless there's anybody else, I'll take some time, although I have so much time to talk to you guys, so I just want to facilitate the discussion. Is that okay? Yeah. So I really loved how you brought the concept of complexity now to my consideration. And I wonder, because I do think that's just so central. And it's a positive way of putting things like overwhelm or, whatever you want to call it. So it's starting in the right point, saying like complexity, how can that be empowering? No? So I wonder about the flavors of complexity. I know Justus, you in particular also work, and Jonas too, with of course systems, but there can be complexity in, let's say, a logistical challenge. There can be complexity because people have a lot of different cultural systems and languages in their head, and they're all kind of getting together. And there can be complex.
Oh, you cut out here, Wiebke, at a very crucial moment, I sense. I wonder whether that's the same for everyone else. Yeah, we'll just wait for you to come back online. I would really love to hear this question.
Jonas, Johan.
Johan. I dropped out. Sorry about that. But I just want. Oh, yeah. Complexity and sound. That was not part of the. So I wonder about these kind of flavors of complexity. Did you hear what I said? No, logistical complexity, cultural complexity of having a lot of languages or cultures in your mind, or the anxiety flavor of like too much, overwhelm. That influences meaning making so much. No, like if you're in an anxious state, the clarity will not come. No, what role does that play?
I can say a word about it from, there we go, from the from kind of the methodologies we use in the neurosciences, where there's a big interest in thinking about underlying similarities and patterns. And while I think there's a lot of differences and flavors in the different kinds of complexities that in some ways don't resemble each other at all, and yet there's a curiosity in other patterns that are somewhat more, maybe not universal, but underlying these different. It's so slightly distracting to see these double images. Sorry for my response being slightly distracted. But yeah, I think the question there is, I do think they are very different, and yet they all have a similar flavor. There's a certain like a lot of information that we're engaged with, and how do we relate to it? And maybe even more specifically, when we speak about the different flavors, the question could be, if there is so much information, what makes the difference between being overwhelmed by it or seeking it as this beautiful opportunity and striving through it? And so I think there's this personal factor where, depending on who we are as individuals, who we are in the culture, the same overload of information can turn opposite directions. Um, and that is something that is an open question. And that is something where I think this GHI community, with all its wisdom in different cultural and historical kind of wisdom traditions, I think can greatly help to uncover this question.
Maybe to build on it, I think it's also, I think one thing that really distinguishes, I think, Jonas's and my practice and type of research is that we're both practitioners, right? We're practice oriented, and almost in what I hear in that is an invitation to practice, right? In our kind of mindfulness practice or in our observation practice, in the meditation techniques that Jonas and I both apprentice in and learn and practice, there is a kind of way in which you observe phenomena arise and try to cultivate a sense of spaciousness or even non-attachment around them, so you can look at them for what they are, as changing, kind of moving, vibrating forces. And that is also an invitation to look at, wow, how does it feel, this kind of anxious side of complexity, or the kind of more many languages one. Is it similar? Is it different? How do I relate to it? How does it arise in experience and dissipate again? So that's a beautiful, I think, invitation for our contemplative practices to explore.
Okay, and maybe in kind of respecting the hour and a half, I know that Wiebke, you want to have another last minute or so to kind of share a bit more about the upcoming forums. And maybe this is a natural place to close the session. And I dropped both Justus and my email in the chat. So if there's any more thoughts or ideas, please reach out. This is the very early beginning of this pillar, our project. There's space for other projects. There's space for co-creating this. And so, yeah, do reach out, and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of this group meet again in forthcoming meetings.
Yes, thank you so much. We have to handle it. I apologize. My computer is an old. Can you hear?
Yeah, this is perfect.
Good. Yeah. My computer is an old horse that I've been keeping for a long time, and there's some challenges I see. I really apologize for that. Thank you so much for taking us on this journey. I really feel it's emblematic of GHI. Probably not the usual type of lecture series you would be attending, where at most you're being fed some food and you might be drinking something if it's not virtual. But this was really for nourishing, as I said before, our mind, hand, and heart, and also emphasizing already really the experiential and embodied idea here of things. And I want to emphasize that because there is an MIT mindset or also of saying, well, we fix a lot of the problems by offering courses like Ethics 101 for engineers. That's all nice and good. Yes, these courses are important, but a lot of the problems that need to be solved on an individual level, all the way to the planetary level, have to do actually with embodied experiences now. And unless that's part, I feel like that's really the center. And that's why I'm so glad, Jonas and Justus, you open this series for us. I would like to make you aware of the next events. On the 21st, we'll have a roundtable on, Johan, you're putting this here, no? Or Mac, you're sharing that? Good. We'll have a roundtable in person here at MIT on humanisms and renaissances across world history. Now, this is really for everybody who feels like, wow, let's dive into different traditions with, we have people from many different, only South Asia is not really represented, different traditions, and to think about like these humanism movements that are also connected, of course, to philology and text and things like that, but often also with kind of moral programs and even practices, no? Like what their role is, how we can kind of think more broadly about what humanism is, what renaissances are, picking up, from previous wisdom and things like that. So you're very welcome to join there. And our next forum will be on good governance in bad times, specifically on the project Comparative Diplomacies for Global Governance and Human Flourishing. The idea being specialists of different kind of macro regions of the world that look at different types of the way diplomacy was done are being brought together in this project to then say, like, what are diplomatic practices that can help us in the present? Because diplomacy, either, within societies, even within families, frankly, within communities and then among states is really one of the biggest challenges right now. We want to empower diplomacy as a tool for problem solving, no? And again, the Consul General from South Korea might be there to speak a little bit about the importance of cultural and public diplomacy. So these are our upcoming events. And if you're interested to continue following us, 2 quick announcements. Sign up for our mailing list. That's on our website. Then you'll get notifications. And I want to invite all of you for May 14th in Boston here at MIT, in Cambridge here at MIT. We're going to launch our Legacies for Our Future challenge of GHI. We're going to have Mike Block, who comes out of the Silk Road Ensemble, Yo-Yo Ma, as a fantastic cellist. He's also a coordinator, actually, for our music pillar. So really fantastic. And we'll have another big famous musician. I'm not yet supposed to kind of announce a rapper, really amazing, who will be performing, and we'll be inviting everybody who would like to join. Will not have a virtual component. You'll have to come in your embodied form, but you're very much invited. So on that note, the last thing is go out, fly free after this wonderful morning together, and keep thinking of your nose and how that feeling can change everything about your day and the world. Okay, that's my last word. And last, thank you also to Johan No, whom you see here. He's the coordinator of GHI. Plus, yes, here he is in embodied space. And also to Meg Tang, who is the research coordinator. So if you're interested in actually joining, the community from a research perspective, do reach out to the pillar coordinators or project leaders like Jonas and Justus, but also directly to Meg. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Wiebke, Johanna.
Goodbye.
Bye.